the national recruiting lead writer for Bleacher Report. And he's here to talk a little bit about yesterday's big signing day. Of course, Tyler, you were all over it, and I'm sure you're probably dizzy still thinking about where all these kids ended up and how they got there. But you do a great job, brother. It's good to talk to you.
Thanks, Mike. Always good to talk with you. Not so much dizzy, more so foggy today. But I will catch my breath at some point this weekend. But thanks for having me on today. Always nice to be back on the airwaves.
Yeah, man, and we know this is a really important day. Yesterday was, but now that the dust has settled, locally, a lot of really good talent. We knew Amir Mitchell made his decision in a story that you guys had at Bleacher Report. He decided to go to Michigan, so he was already in the books. But some other local talent here, not as much as it seems like there's been in the past. But one area that I wanted to ask you about before we talk about some things is his teammate, Bo Melton. A lot of speculation. He tweeted out last week, Ohio State. Now, he's a junior. He hasn't declared yet. But next year at this time, what are we thinking about with Bo Melton?
Well, you tell you what, all due respect to Amir Mitchell, fantastic player in his own right, had a lot of schools that wanted him to play. I think Bo Melton was the best player on Cedar Creek football team this past season. And I think it's a Big Ten. I think it's a Big Ten thing here again. I'm sure Michigan is going to try to cash in on its relationship, through Amir Mitchell and obviously with members of that coaching staff that they have been in communication with. You mentioned Ohio State. Urban Meyer has been able to come into New Jersey, get guys during his tenure in Columbus. And obviously Rutgers, where his father played, they're going to be obviously trying to chase him down. I think ultimately with Melton, he's going to really have a stick over the litter, probably more so than Damon Mitchell ever did at Cedar Creek, and at least as much as Amir Mitchell. And we're talking about a young man who had 11 receiving touchdowns, 11 rushing touchdowns, I believe the totals were. So he's shown that versatility that he can do a lot out of the backfield, can play in the slot. And one thing that you and I both know is Tim Watson, a head coach at Cedar Creek, he will not throw praise in the direction of a player who isn't deserving of it and doesn't work for it. And he has never stopped short of pointing at Melton as a guy that he said I needed to be aware of, and he said that a lot of coaches were going to be aware of. And here we are after his junior year. He is right there front and center, and I think one of the top players in the Garden State, and a young man that you're going to be talking a lot about on 97.3. Yeah, we did a lot this year, and we're looking forward to that. So keep an eye out on him. Let's talk about some of the other guys. We knew Mitchell, as we said, Michigan, but it sounded like Michigan had a really good class. Were they your top class? They were not my top class. I believe they got the top player, though. Rashawn Gary, 6'4", 293-pound defensive tackle from Paramus Catholic up the road. I think he is far and away the best player in the country. I think there's actually a little bit of a gap there that you don't normally see because of his skill set and his authenticity and the way he hustles. He runs a 4.7. But he was one of 6 guys that they brought in from the state of New Jersey. Amir Mitchell, obviously one of them. 2 players from Camden, defensive end Ron Johnson, and wide receiver Brad Hawkins. They brought in one of the top running backs in the Northeast with Kareem Walker from DePaul Catholic and one of his teammates from DePaul Catholic. And a lot of that ties into the fact that Rashawn Gary, old head coach at Paramus Catholic, which is their North Jersey powerhouse, Chris Partridge is now on the Michigan recruiting staff, on the coaching staff. He was influential. He came and hit New Jersey hard. They got 6 guys from the Garden State. And now that Ohio State has hired Greg Schiano as their defensive coordinator, I think there's a clear message out there right now for Rutgers, for the entire area, Maryland, Penn State. Everyone's going to be coming after New Jersey hard. This was part of the motivation for Big Ten expansion, not just bringing the New Jersey, New York media market into it, but also bringing the New Jersey players into it. We may be a small state here in New Jersey, but we are densely populated, and especially up north where the parochial schools loom large, a lot of talented players that schools covet. So expect, even down the Cape Atlantic League, there's a player to watch. You're going to have Big Ten coaches knocking on that door. And new Rutgers head coach Chris Ash, who previously served as defensive coordinator at Ohio State last year, he's going to have his work cut out for him, getting Rutgers back in the mix for these in-state players. Yeah, Tyler Donahue, Bleacher Report, national recruiting analyst. Chris Ash, late to the game. What did you think of Rutgers? That's been their problem. They can't keep the guys in state. They can't keep the top guys in state. They get some Jersey guys. It's not like they're barren, but they're not keeping the top guys there. And here in South Jersey, it seems like from what I'm looking at on their list, I see Tyreek Williams from Timber Creek.
but not a lot of South Jersey flavor in there. And, of course, as you mentioned, they've been constantly getting beat by other schools up north as well. So how did you look at Rutgers and how they did with 18 new players?
I mean, I look at them towards the basement in the Big Ten standings, which isn't easy for me to say, obviously, as a Rutgers alum, but looking at it from an unbiased standpoint, for a Green reporter, there was a struggle this year, and there's been a struggle the last 3-4 years or so with getting these top players to stay in state. Penn State has had field days down in New Jersey. Michigan certainly had one yesterday on signing day. I mentioned Ohio State's ability to come get players. So Rutgers isn't necessarily attracting the guys from Florida and out of state that they did before with Greg Schiano, who really capitalized on some of the Sunshine State players and brought them up. So they're going to have to field the borders as best as they can. I think the best thing they did towards the end was getting a quarterback named Kylan Oden. He was previously committed to Louisville. I like the kid. He's 6'5", about 180, 190 pound frame. I think he has the potential to step up. Quarterback play has really let them down at different stages during the past few years, so we'll see what he can do. And that was important for them predominantly because they lost a heck of a quarterback from Pennsylvania named Anthony Russo, young man I scouted out in Oregon at the Elite 11 finals this past summer. He ended up landing with Temple, which I think was a huge coup for the Owls and really nice for them to cash in. This is a guy that LSU was looking at for a little while as well. So I think Anthony Russo leaving from Rutgers, going to Temple, that's good for Owls fans, and I know that you have some listening.
Yeah, and we'll ask you about them in a minute, but I want to ask you, as a Rutgers guy and their move to the Big Ten, and then seeing this recruiting situation where now the Big Ten schools are kind of coming into New Jersey more. So is the move to the Big Ten a plus or minus for the Rutgers recruiting? I mean, selling recruits that you're in the Big Ten, probably good, but now having to fight with some of the Big Ten schools, not so good.
Yeah, well, I think first things first, it's good for Rutgers first because they're going to bring a lot more money in as a member of the Big Ten Conference. Obviously, there's a lot of sharing. Ohio State's success ultimately benefits Rutgers, ultimately benefits Indiana, and so on, and with the entire conference. But it is a challenge. Obviously, the Big East went defunct when football didn't exist, so it's not like they had a place to stay. I think it was so important because look where UConn is right now. I'm not saying the AAC is a bad conference. Houston this year was just about as good as any team in the country. But if Rutgers was left in that conference, it would have been very difficult to attract recruits. At least now you're at a launching point. Remember, this was a rough year for them, and Kyle Flood lost his job because of that. But the year before, they ended up going to win 8 games, and they beat North Carolina pretty handily in a bowl game. And it was a really nice first season in the Big Ten. Last year, steep drop-off. So Chris Ash, his coaching staff, the challenge here is to become familiar with New Jersey, dig into the trenches. That recruiting staff itself has gone through a lot of fluctuation. I'm not familiar with a lot of people within that staff anymore. So first things first, they got to get tight with the coaches, guys like Tim Watson, and then, of course, up north, they got to get in with the parochial schools as well. So first things first is New Jersey. And it might be a rough patch here. They might be northeast version of the Indiana Hoosiers for a couple years while they get things together. But, they've invested in the stadium. I think they did a nice job finding their next head coach in Chris Ash. And right now it's just a matter of accumulating players on that roster. And the ones you do have, they got to come in and prove that they are better than 3-star players. And they got to prove that they're not just the scraps that were left behind in New Jersey, because that's how people are going to talk about this class. And they're going to hear that. They got to come in and say, hey, I'm a heck of a player from this state. I'm going to go represent the state in Piscataway, and I'm going to go and I'm going to convince other guys to join me in this fight. That's what we did so well under Coach Schiano, and Kyle Flood did a nice job with that, especially early in his tenure, with selling that vision of this being New Jersey State University. I know the name is Rutgers, but it is the State University of New Jersey. It's the FBS program in New Jersey. So it's important that they remind everyone that, and until they do, they're going to continue to get coached by a lot of schools. And if they can win, 5 of those top 15 battles instead of 1 or 2, we'll go a long way.
Last one for you real quickly, Tyler. We're running to the top here. Temple had that big year. Did they capitalize on it?
Yeah, I think they absolutely did, and I think there was a lot of concern about whether their coaching staff would remain. We've seen a lot of fluctuation with the Owls after they've had success, and so they have some stability right now moving forward. And as I mentioned, Anthony Russo, I think he's someone that Owls fans should be absolutely excited about. He's a very, prototypical pro-style quarterback. I think he's a top 20 quarterback in the entire country. So that speaks volumes about what they were able to do. Another guy they got from Philadelphia, hometown product, the defensive tackle, Karamuk. This guy, this is hard as heck to say, Mike. I'm going to try. Karamo Duavante. He is from Philadelphia. He was committed to Penn State, and he ends up in Temple's class, and all is said and done, I think you throw him in there. A guy named Tyleek Rayner from Philadelphia as well at running back. So I would say it's one of their better classes, and I certainly think it actually is probably a stride ahead of Rutgers' class, which, that's a big deal because it's a non-Power 5 conference school. So kudos to Temple, and, again, they're going to be on their way up. I think they're in a really good situation with their conference, and, unlike Rutgers, I see their arrow pointing a little more up right now, and Rutgers is kind of at a crossroads with this new staff.
Good stuff. Tyler Donahue has more on recruiting, of course, at TD's Take on Twitter. Of course, he originated here on the South Jersey Sports Report Saturday mornings, and now the National Football Recruiting Analyst at Bleacher Report. For more on your favorite college and your favorite high school football players, check him out. Tyler, hope all is well, man. Did you tie the knot yet? Has that happened?
It's going down in November at Rutgers. So it's going to happen, and not there yet. Got a few more strings to pull before we get there, but the ring's on the finger a year after I put it on there, so I guess that's still good news. And got to make it, another 9 months, and yes, I will be a married man.
All right, brother. Well, good to catch up with you. We'll talk soon.
All right, Mike. I'll talk to you soon.